Okay. The next thing I'm gonna go over is the second type of issue we can come across, which are swaps. A swap is a marker that thinks it's another marker. In here I have the example of the hand, which is usually where the swaps happen. So we have three markers that represent our hand. So from the elbow joint, the marker gets connected to the outer wrist joint. This would be the back part of our palm, and this would be the inner wrist, or the way we can see it as well, like this would be our thumb, where our thumb is pointing. So we can see here that the motion is the arms are being lifted up. Well, in this case, turn around, so we have two swaps. Okay, so there's there. Lifted up. But we can see how the line changes. So from the elbow joint that's supposed to go to the outer wrist, now we see how it moves to the inner part. So this happens because since two cameras have to be seeing the same marker, at this moment the camera lost track of the inner hand for just these two frames. So when it came back into view of another camera, it got confused, so it thought that now the inner wrist, it's actually the outer wrist. And we can visualize swaps like this in the graph editor. If we select the two that got selected, the two markers that got swapped, and select the two keys, the two axes, here we can see how the curves are being crossed. So in here, that's the moment where this key went to this other curve. The way we fix these swaps is, once we select that this is the marker we're looking for, we're gonna scroll forward in the scene to see where it goes back to how it's supposed to be. We can see jitters there. So it's still there. So I'm pretty sure it's gonna be here in this gap where it turns back. Yep. And it loses it there, and it goes back to normal again. Okay. So what we need to do is we need to extract this whole part of the data where this marker is swapped, which will start here. So what we do is we're gonna select the whole thing, all the keys until this next gap, because that's where we saw the data comes back. So there, yep, all the way here. So now that we have this selected, we're just gonna remove it with 8 as we would fix a jitter. Imagine this is a huge jitter. Okay, so now we left it all without any keys, and we can see how now our marker we have this huge drag because we told PeelSolve to make this a gap or no keys. But that's why we never delete anything, because the marker is actually here. So what we just removed from that marker, it's kept here as an unlabeled marker. So now that we have this one selected, we're gonna do the same with the other, because it's 2. So the swap will occur in the 2 markers. So we can see here, this is a moment where the occlusion and the swap happens. So all this data that's here That's the data we want to change. That's our huge jitter that ends here in this other swap. So we're just gonna unlabel it again. You see how it's called wrist in at the moment. And now it's just called unlabeled 15. So now we have these two markers unlabeled, and you can even see how the color changes. So now we're gonna add to it. So what we need to do is, I'm gonna first start with the wrist out. So I'm gonna select it, I'm gonna set X to tell PeelSolve that I wanna work with this marker, so anything I do is to the wrist out. Then I'm gonna scroll through and find this, the marker that I want. It's called unlabeled 15, but I know this is the marker that I want because you can see here how the triangle goes. So what I'm gonna do is select all the keys and click here where this arrow and X is set. So that I'm telling PeelSolve that this unlabeled marker is wrist out. So that's why, and now you can see how the graph is attached. So this X set tells PeelSolve what marker to work with. So if I select, I'm gonna do it again with the wrist in. So I select the wrist in, that it's all the way over here because it doesn't have any data. So remember, it's gonna try to connect this part to this part. So I select it, I set wrist in, select the unlabeled marker, and tell it to label it as wrist in. There we go. So now the motion is the same. We didn't delete any data, we didn't fix any jitters, we just fixed that swap. So now the hand stays the same. There was a jitter there because I didn't fix it. So we can see it here. If you see these red things, don't worry too much. That will get fixed with the filter. So we're just gonna remove this bit of bad data we have here. If this is really bothering you, what you can do is go here and just automatically do this, and that's literally the fix. So that is swaps. Okay, so just make sure you go over all the markers and make sure there are no jitters, there are no swaps, no occlusions, no funky things. Because what happens is when we get to the solving phase, all these little issues show up. So jitters in hands, legs, or something will create the whole leg to vibrate, or the character could be holding a gun and it could give you the sensation that he's trembling or shaking when it's just bad data. Swaps could show up as joints or limbs turned upside down. The wrist or the hand would be facing upwards when it should be facing downwards, or the elbow or the shoulder is pointing backwards. So it does show up on the solving process if you don't clean the data. So that's why it's a very important step. Occlusions or huge gaps will result in parts of the body sliding or moving the way it shouldn't be moving. So just be careful of that. I wanted to go over what the filter does. So we can see here we have a part with the hand is jittering a lot. Let's use this one. So we can see this huge jitter there. So if you have the marker selected and go PeelSolve filter, you will come across with this window. We only need to worry about the cutoff setting. It's a good number to have it at 100. And what it does is, when I click filter, these keys that are off the general curve will get pushed down. So here we go. So now we can see that now we fixed some of the jitter. But there's something that I wanted to talk about here. So if I select it again, we can see here, if I zoom in, how the curve should be straight here. From here to here, to there, to there, to there, to there, to there, to there. So if I hit filter again, you'll see here how it does help, but it creates these curves. So this will only result in a sliding of the arm. You see there? So that's why you need to be careful with this filter and not just apply it. So it's good to help it clean it a bit. So if we remove some of the major jitter, like this one as well, and we only have this, PeelSolve has a better understanding because it knows that this has to be straight as well. So now if I was to apply the cutoff now, you can see how this one got removed, it got filled here, but I still have this little slide or curve that I didn't want. So if I was to help completely, now I have a perfect curve, and when I hit filter, the only thing it does, it just fills the keys. So this is a good way to use the filter. If you increase or decrease the cutoff, say let's do 20, you see how it helped even more. So now I didn't even need to remove these ones. It knew that that's where I wanted these keys to be. If I was to increase it to 150, it will apply less strength, so it'll keep these sort of curves. So just be aware of that. The more you increase the cutoff, the less it'll push it down. So you have it at 60, that's usually an average, and you'll see how it creates this little gap. If I was to do it at 10, it will completely stomp it and make it flat. So that's how this filter works. It's something good to know. So that's all for the first part on the cleaning tools. I hope it's not too confusing, and I hope you are able to follow this tutorial with no problem. If not, you can always email the studio or get in contact with us, and we'll be more than happy to help you.